it's Marilyn Wilson here. Happy Monday. I hope everyone had a great weekend. I had a senior that graduated from high school, so I have no tears left in my tear ducts at the moment, but hope all of you guys had some fun too, and that the markets are really starting to pick up in your market. Want to say good morning to a few people, Philip and Dennis and Mary and Tim. Thank you so much for being here and being such loyal followers here. It's great to have you here all the time. And we've got a great topic today. We've been talking a lot about this, but I think it like everything within COVID, things change on a minute's notice, right? So Aaron Kardell is here today from Homespotter, and he's going to show us a variety of ways that he's got several product offerings. He's going to show us how they've been incorporating the whole concept of virtual open houses and showings. And he's going to kind of talk to us how he's seeing the whole open house concept evolve. Again, it's in minutes and hours, not days and weeks and months, but I think some really good conversations about the best ways for us to think about, taking full advantage of all the new emerging ways for us to do open houses. So first, want to just remind everybody, we love to get questions from you. So if you want to click on the question box there, and there's a little triangle, just click on that, open it up, and ask us anything, Aaron or myself, anything that you think is relevant. Thanks, Tim, for the congrats. It was a fun weekend for sure. So we've got, like as I mentioned, Aaron, he's the founder and CEO of Homespotter. Now, Aaron, how long have you been in real estate and doing this type of technology? It's been a long time, right?
Yeah, it's starting to add up. So got started back in 2009 with Homespotter. We were known then as a company that went by the name of Mobile Realty Apps, but it's been a fun journey.
That's right. And unfortunately, Aaron lives in Minneapolis, so he's had some, like everyone in Minneapolis, some trauma in the last few days. So I'm sorry about that. It's been a very sad set of events that have gone on in your city.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's heart goes out to the families impacted.
Absolutely. So let's just go in and maybe just give us a quick overview of what Homespotter does, and then we'll jump into all of the things that you're learning, but the nationwide stuff that you're doing. But just give us an overview. What is Homespotter?
Sure. So Homespotter, as I mentioned, we've been around a little over 10 years now. Really got started with our first product in market, which we now refer to as Connect by Homespotter, which is a mobile search and collaboration app, typically sold to MLSs and larger brokerage firms. Mm-hmm. We've added to that over time with a couple of additional product lines. We added in approximately 2016 a product called Boost by Homespotter that focuses on digital advertising automation, especially around listings and open houses. And in early 2019, we acquired a company called Spacey. And the Spacey product is focused on really open house lead generation and management, really kind of focused on capturing visitor information at open houses and then having great follow-up after the fact and great integrations with a variety of CRMs. So those are kind of our three products. As Marilyn mentioned, we're predominantly based in Minneapolis and have a few other offices as well.
So you've got your hands full with three different solutions. That's great, and you're learning things. So I'm going to jump to the next slide. This is a really interesting because Aaron's operating in so many different businesses and in so many different markets. Give us some ideas of what you're seeing now with the whole concept of open houses and how it's evolving.
Yeah, well, given that really, I'd say a product and a half of ours are very heavily focused on open houses. So substantial parts of Spacey and also our Boost offering have a lot to do with open houses. We've been watching the trends very closely, and it's very true to say that, really as we kind of hit late March and really through most of April, there were very few open houses occurring nationally, and for obvious reasons. We have been incrementally seeing those return over the month of May, but we are seeing them take very different forms. And so, I think here we'll talk a little bit more about just some of the virtual forms that they've taken. But later on, we'll talk a little bit more about how we see some adaptations occurring on kind of the physical open houses as well. I think early on, we've seen a lot of enterprising agents look for ways to take the open house experience online and to conduct virtual open houses. And we've seen kind of a few sets of best practices form around that. I would say there are really kind of two primary types, if you will, of virtual open houses that most often occur. One of those would be considered more of a live stream virtual open house where, at a specific point in time, an agent's going to be on property and they're going to be doing a live stream broadcast and taking questions as they walk through the property. And so that's certainly one form that's taken off. Another form, as agents have gotten creative, is to maybe put together more of a PowerPoint presentation and set up a Zoom or a GoToMeeting and to walk prospective buyers through aspects of not just the property, but the neighborhood, and really use it as more of, almost like a little bit of a mini CMA presentation, and use that as an opportunity to talk to potential buyers about a property. But as there's been some confusion around this virtual open house concept, I've got to commend a lot of the MLSs have moved very quickly in terms of adding virtual open house options to the MLS system that agents can add those in. As there's been confusion, some agents have been taking more of the traditional virtual tours and adding those links as scheduled virtual open houses, which misses the point a little bit. The idea with a virtual open house is that it is scheduled at a specific point in time to walk a buyer through aspects of the property, whether that's through that live stream or more in presentation format. And when you put in a virtual tour link, those are super valuable, but the idea of a virtual tour is that it's available anytime on demand and less of a scheduled experience.
Yes, I'd love to ask the audience. I'm going to ask two questions. One is, are more of you actually including a regular virtual tour with all of your properties, right? Because I know that I used to hear, and I bet this number is changing, you might know, Aaron, it used to be about 30% of listings had some sort of virtual tour. Have you seen that number go up just for a regular virtual tour, not anything live or orchestrated?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly varies, I would say, based on price point of the property and based on markets around the country. But we've definitely seen that number go up. And it's a number that's been going up year over year, but dramatically so as of late. The other thing I guess I'll just add about virtual tours is, I think we've definitely seen an evolution in the virtual tour experience. I think, as I entered the industry 10 years ago, a lot of these virtual tours were really slideshow set to music, and those still do exist. But as other tools like Matterport have taken off, that's really increased the bar. But for those agents that maybe don't have a Matterport camera or don't have access to that, even a video walkthrough, even if it's not professionally taken, but more of a recorded experience of an agent walking through the property, I believe can bring a high degree of authenticity and also provide a lot of valuable information. And so, hosting those pre-recorded videos on YouTube or Vimeo is another great way to get a virtual tour experience out there.
Gotcha. Okay. And it's interesting you said that, and recently, I think we know that, whoops, let me jump back for a second. In Georgia, you were saying that, because they that market opened a few weeks ago, that there's still a bunch of physical open houses, but there's more physical open houses than virtual open houses once the market's back open. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think, we were watching closely some of the, you know, advanced brokers that we're working with have been over the month of April promoting, I'll back up a second. Some brokers we work with have a concept of what they might call a mega open house event, where over a given weekend, they really, go all out on promoting open houses. And so some of those brokers who have traditionally done those for physical open houses have done that with virtual open houses over the last month or two.
Mm-hmm.
So we were, really curious to watch as places like Georgia open back up. They basically gave their agents an option: do you want to host a physical or virtual? Either way, we'll promote that with an ad. And when agents were given a choice, we did see about a 3-to-1 use of a physical open house as opposed to a virtual open house.
That makes sense. Okay, so tell us now about this. This is a concept that I really like, of open house by appointment. What are you seeing with this?
Yeah, so I think I first heard this concept really probably 9 or 10 weeks ago as I was interviewing a number of different agents as to, how are you dealing with this environment? And it seemed really compelling at the time, and I've heard it growing since. And that's basically that rather than a traditional open house, we're going to have the house open, people just show up whenever they want, kind of go through and hope for the best. Instead, agents are segmenting a block of time, and they'll say, I'll be at the house during this time. If you want to come see the property, I need you to pre-register for a time slot where you'll be the only person in the property. Occasionally, some of them are allowing maybe 2 parties in at a time, but they'll basically limit it so that maybe 1 party can be in at a time, and then they allow for, say, 5 minutes of cleaning between each visitor. And obviously this is the kind of thing that's important and on trend right now. Helps increase safety, not just for the visiting potential buyer, but also for the seller that might still be living in the property. But one of the things that I'm personally bullish on with this concept is that I think, even after COVID, I think listing agents are going to need to give a lot of thought to how do we just streamline the selling experience in a way that remains competitive against alternatives like iBuying. And the iBuyer concept, like the reason it has taken off in a small way thus far is really about seller convenience. They don't want to have people walking through their house at any random time. They don't want to have to be able to drop everything at a moment's notice and have people walk through for a showing. And I think smart listing agents might make it a part of their arsenal to say, like, look, if you list with me, we're going to really time box the times that we're going to allow people to come through your property. It's going to be far less hassle because you're going to know in advance when those are. And by the way, we're going to know who everyone is and maybe even a sense of whether they're qualified or not. And so really making better use of that time.
Well, it seems makes so much sense for so many reasons. Number one, safety, right? We haven't been talking a lot about that lately because we haven't have as many issues because there aren't as many live activities happening, right? But
yeah.
If there's only 1 person at a time, it's a lot easier to keep track of what's going on with them, right? You're going to be able to sell better. The agent's going to be able to sell better to that person because they can actually walk the house with them. like you say, the client doesn't have to have their house, you know, perfectly in shape every day for 6 weeks, which makes their lives so much easier. It just
Yeah,
seems like it makes sense all the way around to think about something like that. And like you say, the most important thing is that this is not just looky-loos. It's just not the neighbors trying to check out how your kitchen renovation went, right? It's like these are
yeah,
people who are actually interested in purchasing the home. So we're like narrowing the field, but we're bringing it to the people that really make sense. And not to mention all of the health and safety issues of you don't have people in touching everything when there's not, you know, if you're an agent walking the house with someone, you can keep the doors open and make sure they don't touch anything. And if they do, you can go back and know what they did and go to that to clean it before the next person comes through. So it makes a lot of sense. It's kind of like, why didn't we always do this when you think about it, right? It's kind of
yeah,
funny.
yeah. It'll be interesting to see. You know, obviously a lot of this depends on, you know, it's been interesting to just watch the macroeconomic trends, and you know, we are still very much in a seller's market. Like buying demand far exceeds seller demand right now, and or supply rather, and you know, to the extent that that holds up, and you know, we'll learn a lot over the next 6 to 18 months on whether that remains true. But to the extent that that holds up, I think sellers are really going to be in a driving seat on this.
Yeah, it seems like from all indicators like that, we're going to stay there for a while. Inventory is pretty tight, but anyway, tell us about Boost, one of your products, how you've incorporated all of these ideas to make it easier for agents to fully leverage all of these new open house concepts.
Yeah, so Boost, just as a reminder, it's all about advertising your listings and open houses on platforms like Facebook and Instagram and all across the web. And recently we added some new ad types to that make it easier to promote a virtual tour or a virtual open house. And a big part of the Boost system is we do include with it not just the ad, but also a landing page that's designed to capture interest. And
Perfect.
so we've got specially designed landing pages for both virtual open houses and virtual tours that are designed to capture that interest. And one of the nice things with that is if I'm a consumer putting in my information for an upcoming virtual open house, we're going to send you an email calendar invite to remind you to show up at that time. And we leave it up to the consumer, but we can also text them as well. And so, you know, sometimes it's easy to, you know, forget about a upcoming open house, be it virtual or physical. And this is just a great way to both get the word out up front and to make sure people actually show up at the time of the event.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your perspective on the kind of tool to use for this too? I thought you had some really interesting thoughts to share with people about a Facebook Live versus a Zoom or a GoToMeeting or all of the other types of things that are available today.
Yeah, I think, you know, certainly one of the advantages of Facebook Live is that you can get broad promotion and get a lot of organic traffic to the event. With that being said, you do lose out on some of the ability to know who's there and to follow up with them after the event. And when you think about why listing agents have traditionally done open houses, it's you know, certainly there's if we're all honest, there's a little bit of appeasement perhaps of the seller to show that you know, you're marketing the property, but also a big part of it is to generate leads, whether that's buyer leads for that property or another property, or perhaps to find the next seller. And so with that, we are encouraging people to at least try out tools like Zoom or GoToMeeting, and to do so in a way that allows an agent to know who's there and to be able to follow up with them. And that's well, that's important from a lead generation perspective. It's also important from a security and safety perspective. Being able to, with some assurance, say these are the people who've been through the house, even if doing so is virtually.
Right. So there's a qualification there, and you say like a specific definition. So I think one of the things we might all need to think about is we've kind of done historically with open houses, it's been more about quantity over quality, right? Oh, we had 50 people through the house. Well, yeah, but you might have only needed 3 that really mattered, right?
Yeah.
So we have to think about reselling the concept of qualified tours as opposed to just a bunch of people, right? It's not about the number, it's about the right people coming through, and might just need to think about how do we position that a little differently in listing presentations and things like that. Well,
For sure.
tell us about Spacey and what that product is and how you can help use that as well for virtual open houses.
Yeah, so Spacey, as we hinted at previously, for the most part, has traditionally been used for capturing visitor information at physical open houses and then automating some of the follow-up with those visitors after the fact. As we saw some of these new trends emerge, we are continually adding in new forms of listing lead capture forms, an increasing number of which are now online. So we've added to the product the ability to set up virtual open house and virtual tour lead generation forms where you can basically put in whatever questions you want to ask, perhaps from a pre-qualification perspective, and set up a form and then use that to basically distribute information about the virtual tour, the virtual open house online. And by using this form, whether you're using that Facebook Live or a Zoom event, instead of directly posting the Facebook or Zoom link out there, you would instead post the Spacey link, which allows you to capture that information in advance and some of those pre-qualification questions, and then the prospective potential buyer is going to get an email with information on how to join up to the live event later. This product also integrates with really all of the popular CRMs that are out there, so it's a great way to make sure that any leads that you're capturing make it back into your CRM for follow-up.
So Spacey in its original definition before virtual was if someone would sign in like they would normally do in an open house, they would sign into Spacey and you capture that, which would then, that person's name would feed into your client relationship management processes. Is that correct? And that now you can do it for virtual or for live open houses?
That's correct. And then, and as we continue to evolve the product, we're doing new feature updates on really a few times a month basis. And one of the things that you can expect in the next week or two here is we'll be adding in the ability to do those open house by appointment schedulings. And so if you be able to set up those time blocks where people can schedule a time to come to an open house, you'll be able to set up forms for that as well.
So I think the bottom line of what I'm hearing here from what you're saying is that open houses of all sorts are evolving, right? There's open house by appointment, which may be a more well orchestrated, safer, more well qualified way to do a live open houses, which are now being possible in a lot more markets than they were before. And it's almost like that, the one-on-one attention, but also the one-on-one safety, right? That's happening. And then the concept of virtual open houses is being used in a variety of different ways. We've talked a couple of times, I think you might agree with this, Aaron, is that, nobody wants to drive someone to 30 houses, which is what I know many of you guys have had to do over the years. But if there were 30 houses that fit someone's criteria and they saw 25 of them, or all 30, frankly, from a virtual open house, and you may only need to drive them to 2 or 3, which saves everybody time and money, right?
For sure. And I think I think there are, those cases where maybe you're moving to a distant city and you might get all the way to point of making an offer without visiting the property. But I do think consumers are going to continue to crave viewing the property in person, but they'll be a lot more selective, as you suggested, in checking out many of those properties virtually in advance.
So would you say we're at the stage now where if I'm a listing agent, I'm trying to secure a listing, that I have to promise virtual tours, live open house or virtual open houses, as well as regular open houses, and maybe by appointment? Is that a fair statement now, that you just got to do all three if you want to really be doing this job?
I think the level of service expectations is going to continue to evolve, and as you mentioned at the beginning of this, may change hour by hour here. But I do think some of the things that will remain are an expectation around providing a virtual tour that can be viewed at any time, and a willingness and a flexibility to adapt the showing experience to one that fits the comfort level of the seller. And so I do think even hopefully as we find a vaccine and some of these other things, I do think sellers will begin to develop a preference for this open house by appointment philosophy and having a less disruptive experience. And so the question may be between now and then, how much should you expect to do virtual open houses or otherwise? And I guess my main encouragement would be to experiment, see what works well for you individually. I think some listing agents may be somewhat intimidated about the idea of a live stream virtual open house. What could go wrong? And even you and I before this, we were working out cameras and stuff. So some of it is you just gotta experiment and try. And if you're less comfortable with that live stream environment, maybe you do try something a little more contained, like a PowerPoint presentation that walks consumers through the property in the neighborhood and provides an opportunity to provide live questions and feedback.
Well, the other interesting thing about what we're talking about, of this sort of more, how would I say it, more self-contained or less disruptive methods for doing open houses, is a really good way to push back against an iBuyer. Because we did research on iBuyers about like 2 or 3 months ago, before all this craziness started. And while it wasn't an overwhelming problem, it was one of the areas where people that were moving toward iBuyers were like, I don't want to deal with having my house clean and having people tromping through it for 6 or 8 weeks. You don't have to promise that anymore. If it says, we're going to do 2 Saturdays for 4 hours, so you got to clean it twice and not for 8 weeks. It's a way to tell people it's not as cumbersome to sell the more traditional way, right? It might be one of the tools you can use to push back against iBuyers, not the least of which, in addition to, is the fact it costs them more to use iBuyers. Always remind people about that. It's publicly available on all of those iBuyer websites. You can see how much higher their commission rates are relative to what you guys do normally. So use that too. We should probably do a session on, you reminded me, we'll do one on iBuyers. We haven't talked about that in a while. Now that they're opening back up, we probably need how do you counter an iBuyer story? So we'll get on that. This is really helpful. Thank you so much. So tell us about this one now. What are you doing for Connect, and what is Real Connect real quick?
Yeah, so Connect is basically a mobile search and collaboration platform that allows really both agents and buyers to search for properties and to message each other throughout the buying process. And so we moved pretty quickly on the Connect product to add in the ability to search for virtual open houses and to see those as you're looking at properties. And as we did this, we also kind of revisited our virtual tour support. We've had great virtual tour support for a while, but basically what we do is, knowing that some of those virtual tours traditionally have been, those slideshows with music, we've always wanted in the product to highlight some of the better virtual tour experiences. And so one of the things that we did recently was we kind of revisited who are the better options right now and made sure that those are featured prominently in the app.
So basically every tool that you've gotten, you've said this virtual open house idea, virtual tours are more and more important. We're going to just drop everything and go make that happen in a few weeks. You, like many technology providers, along with the MLSs, have done a great job, I think, of pivoting on this and helping agents in their time of need with so many things going on. So I appreciate you spending all that time and energy, Aaron. I know it probably was not easy to do when your families were and your developers were just as freaked out as everyone else. So thanks for stepping up on behalf of everyone on the call and across the country. So tell us about some of these things here. I know we will send these out to all of you that have registered for this too, but give us what are some of these resources available just to have people understand what they might want to click through and learn more about.
Yeah, so the first two here are resources that are on our blog that kind of walk through, what are some of the differences between virtual tours and virtual showings and virtual open houses and how to use them. And so kind of a big walkthrough. Doesn't really have a whole lot to do with our products, just kind of walks through some of the best practices. One of the things that we talked about a little bit today was some of the pros and cons of using Facebook Live versus Zoom or other tools, and some background on that. And then a couple of informational resources on how to better use Spacey and Boost specifically around some of these various types of virtual events.
Perfect. So if anybody's interested in those, the click through to those, we'll be again including those for the email follow up to you guys, so you'll get those. But again, just if anybody hasn't heard this, I think they have by now. But this whole virtual open house thing is not going away, so it's time for all of us to figure it out. And again, even if you can't do all of that, make sure that you've got virtual tours, because the level of expectation, I believe, was always high for consumers. We've seen study after study that says engagement on listings online that have virtual tours are better than ones that don't, but we're at a whole new level of expectation. So time to jump on that for sure. So just wanted to remind you guys about who else we've got coming up this week. Tomorrow we've got Richard Kellman. He's the president and CEO of Prospect Converter, and he's going to talk about, there's lots of ways to generate leads, including the virtual tours that we were talking about today. He's going to talk to us about how to make sure none of those sort of fall off the table and drop and die, right? If you're spending good time and energy on those, how do we make sure we take full advantage of them? And then on Wednesday, we've got Drew Ewer. He is the CEO from Homelight. And that's a company that actually helps connect agents with consumers, providing feedback on their performance as well as some of the amount of business that they do. So that's a whole different kind of a program. So we'll be seeing that on Wednesday. So lots of continued exciting topics for us to talk about. Wanted to also remind everybody that if you want us to sign you up automatically for the coffee chat, so they come in every day, feel free to do that. Just send an email, either put it in the question box right now or send it to me at marilyn@retechnology.com, and we'll get you signed up. I know there's a bunch of you that do that, so just makes it easy for you to not forget, and also to get the recording automatically. And another way to participate too is to go to YouTube and look for RE Technology Inc., exactly the way it's listed there with no space. Click the subscribe button and the bell, and make the bell solid next to the subscribe button, and then you'll get notified of all of the coffee chat recordings and actually other webinars that we do on RE Technology as well. And if you do not yet have a free subscription to RE Technology through your MLS, which many of them provide to you, that's a $200 value that your MLSs provide. If you do not have that, go to retechnology.com. On the top right-hand side, you'll see a sign that says Create Account. Click there, look at the monthly option, and then type in one of the codes here, and we'll give you a free 3-month subscription, so you can hear from people like Aaron and so many of the other smarty smarts that we had on this show for the last several weeks. So with that, Aaron, I want to thank you so much. This is great stuff. Again, thank you for you and your team that has stepped up in such a big way to help your customers and hopefully some new customers along the way to help us all do a better job here.
Thanks a lot, Marilyn. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. And thanks to the audience. Thanks to all of our regulars for coming in and asking questions like always. But we will see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock Pacific and noon Eastern. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.